later. I have started to record. In reference to bandwidth, if you wouldn't mind, go ahead and turn off your video. That will actually help us to be able to present more clearly as we go. A few things you should know. Our sessions actually begin 5 minutes after the hour. Today is Saturday, June 27th. We will begin in about another minute here with Scouting as Ministry. 11:05 is Are You Here to Save Someone? 12:05, Places to Connect. Tomorrow we will start at 2 p.m. Eastern. Scouting Through Technology. We'll then look at bringing the Spirit to your group. How do we interact with the Spirit in each of our different and unique settings? And then we will shift to using Pray, the Protestant relations programs for sharing faith. There will be a short break between sessions, and all sessions, as I said, will be recorded and available after the conference. So we do have some nonverbal opportunities. If you would, please use Zoom's raise your hand feature over here if you would like to ask a question. We also have assigned people monitoring the chat. So please feel free to use the chat feature, and your question will be read aloud by a co-host, which will open the door for two-way communication. So let's get started. Scouting as Ministry. So my name is Stephen Scheid. I'm the director for the Center for Scouting Ministries. We are at the General Commission on United Methodist Men. The United Methodist Men made a decision in the late 70s that scouting was such an important part of the church that they wanted to adopt it. And we have been housed with the United Methodist Men ever since. I have been previously a local licensed pastor, an industrial engineer, and plant manager. I am an Eagle Scout. I have been I've been on Wood Badge and Wood Badge staff. I'm a big brother, which I absolutely love. And as a fun note, I have run 2 full marathons and 1 half marathon. One after turning 43 without any practice and having a lot of pain following. So I want to kind of start off with, when we're talking about scouting as ministry, I think we have to ask a question. Who are we? What are we going to do in ministry? So to help answer a couple of those questions, who we are, I'm going to launch a couple polls, and we're going to collect some information from you. Actually, I'm not. My polls just died on me. So we'll actually take the polls tomorrow. I apologize about that. What you should know as United Methodists is that we are a connected church. That means we have a connectional polity, which polity is a big or short word for how we govern the church. We have a book of discipline that tells us what we do. So the overview of what the church looks like is we have a general conference. And I'm going to put this in perspective for you. 864 people, half of them clergy, half of them laity, which is non-clergy, looking at the opportunity to agree on things. If you think Congress is bad, Congress doesn't represent people from all across the world. So we have lots of different views and lots of different opportunities. We have the jurisdictional and central conferences, which these are the groups that select the executive branch. They vote in bishops. You might think of them as the electoral colleges. We have bishops, which are the regional executive branch leaders. They would be equivalent to the president within their conference. The judicial council, which is equivalent to the Supreme Court. But this is where we get into the good stuff. Down at annual conferences, districts, and multiple churches. That is where ministry happens. I want to give you a picture of why we need scouting as ministry. So we're going to take a look at some slides here that give you a deeper look into where the church is at. I don't know how many of you are aware about how membership is looking in the church. Around 1970, we hit a peak of 10,671,000 plus members in the United States. As of 2010, we were around 7,679,000 members in the church. We're actually headed on a deep slide to the wrong direction. And that is important because we see the church as a place for connection, an opportunity to grow. It's a place where we serve out God. So I want to share two more charts that help explain one specific need. This was the age distribution among United Methodists. If you look at it, 33% of us are over 65. 30% of us are over 50. 63% of the church is already in that, what we might call the gray hair phase. That's something to think about. The people who are missing from our church are their youth. We're not finding ways to connect. And I think this is a part of why we're not connecting so well. 76% of the United Methodists who attend church are non-parents, and only 24% are parents. That is, they have children under 18 years old. So one of the things that we really need to be able to do is, as a church, find places to connect with the community, and especially with children under 18 in our community. Scouting ministries, Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, Campfire, Big Brothers, Big Sisters, are keen ways for us to connect into the community. I want to share a short video, and it might be a little bit cheesy, so laugh if you want. Come on.
Here is the church. Here is the steeple. Open the door, and where are all the people?
I'll tell you where all the people are. According to the Pew Research 2018-2019 of U.S. adults who identify as by a particular religion, the younger you go, the further they are from affiliated with a specific organized faith group. We call that group the nuns. They have no specific faith desire. It doesn't mean that they're not spiritual people. They identify as spiritual, but they don't have a connection with the fellowship. In the United States, you should understand that the nuns have grown by nearly 30 million people over the past decade. The trend is that they're going to even grow even further. A lot of youth aren't growing up because the parents are missing from the church. They're growing up without being connected to a church. Scouting Ministries is one of the ways in which we open the doors. Reverend Kathy Noble put it this way: Scouting is an often overlooked door for United Methodists to go into their communities and for the community to take the first step into the church. But it is a part of the church. We've been in the Book of Discipline for many years, multiple quadrenniums. The idea of going out into the community goes back to the heart of Wesley and how United Methodist as a whole, the movement was founded. What we're looking at is a theological challenge that we need to be able to put into practical service. In Proverbs 22:6 says, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. We're told in Matthew, Luke, and Mark about the story of the disciples holding the children back from Jesus because they thought, he's so busy. He's trying to teach so many adults. But here's the thing. When Jesus saw this, he was indignant, and he said to them, let the little children come and do not hinder them, for the kingdom of God belongs to such as these. Think about that. These are the disciples who were hanging out with Christ. These are the closest people to Christ in his life, except maybe his mother and father, right? These are people who will spend 3 years following him. And he is indignant, and he's saying, don't hinder the children. So how do we not hinder the children today? I like to look at the road to Emmaus. That story tells us that Jesus spent time with his disciples after his resurrection. When he spent that time with them, he talked with them, he explained with them, he shared with them. And yet, even in all that sharing, they didn't see him until right before he left. When we spend time with others, we have the opportunity to share and reveal who Christ is. In many ways, we open the door simply for faith as a starting point. There are so many nuns out there, people with unaffiliated spirituality, who need a place to connect. We need to open that door for them. So our scouting partners are Girl Scouts of the USA, Boy Scouts of America, Campfire, Big Brothers, Big Sisters, and Pray, or programs of religious activities with youth. Each of these has a very specific mission alignment with the United Methodist Church. Girl Scouts is very specific in saying that they want to build girls of courage, confidence, and character who make the world a better place. The United Methodist mission is to make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. If you're going to make the world a better place, you're going to be transforming it. In the Boy Scouts of America, the mission of the Boy Scouts is to prepare young people to make ethical and moral choices over their lifetimes by instilling in them the values of the Scout Oath and the Scout Law. What you should be realizing is if they're living into their Scout Oath and Scout Law, they're living Christian principles. They parallel each other very well. They will start to learn a life of service. It's a part of everything that they do in BSA. In Campfire, the promise is that young people want to shape the world, and Campfire provides an opportunity for them to find their spark, lift their voice, and discover who they are. Self-exploration is a key point of Christian life. It's how we become stronger in who we are in our relationship with God. Big Brothers, Big Sisters has their theme that is to create a support for one-on-one mentoring relationships that ignite the power and promise of youth. If you could think of one way for us to make discipleship real, I mean, straight up as real as it gets, partner up one adult, one child, and open a door for them to see who they are in full potential. Love them for just who they are. That's really a nuts and bolts discipleship. The Praise mission is to foster Christian growth of children, youth, and families through churches and youth serving agencies. What you should realize is we use Pray as a Christian tool to help teach about the church, about God, and about families. We in God and Life, we challenge them to find places, challenge youth to find places where they can connect one-on-one with God throughout the rest of their lives. I said it earlier, but I want you to think about it again. The United Methodist Church's mission statement is to make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. That statement reveals basics about how we are in the Methodist Church. Those two basics are love God and neighbor and transform the world. In each of our organizations, we partner with loving God and learning to serve or transforming the world are key elements. Children and adolescents, well, those who have an informal mentor-like adult relationship, they actually are much, much more resilient. I'll also tell you, it impacts lots of other aspects at home. My daughter is in town with me, kind of unannounced. Her and her husband and brought the grandsons over, showed up at 4:30 in the morning. I'm grateful they're there. But she reminded me of what was happening when she was a teenager. We were really struggling at home with her. But one of her the parents of her best friend, Maria's mother, said, "Oh, Catherine's just the most amazing girl in the world." And I said, "Oh, that's cool." And she goes, No. When she comes over, she does the dishes. She helps Maria keep her room clean. She watches the little kids." And I said, "Really?" I thought, honestly, that my daughter transformed into somebody totally different when she went to another place. But I'll tell you what happened is she had a mentor in Maria's mother. And having a mentor changes how the children behave. It gives them a lot of resilience in how they do things in life. It's also important for them to learn how to work in groups, face challenges, to take on particular tasks in school and out of school. All of our organizations open those doors. We help to reflect what really matters to parents. And I think that's important too, because when Maria's mom said to Catherine, "Well, you keep Maria's room clean with her, how's yours look?" That actually made a difference, a lot bigger difference than what I could say. Those are some of the results. But I wanted to share why this is most important. Peter L. Benson, he's the creator of the Development Asset Framework, which looks at how children develop over time. Well, he found that after over 34 years of researching, his conclusion came down to nothing is more impactful in the life of a child than positive relationships. And I know someone tagged this in our chat, that all young people want and need is our attention. You really can't believe how true that is. When a psychologist who's been studying for 34 years comes up with that answer, I think we can really trust that that's true. So we want to build disciples. Remember the disciples of Jesus who hindered the children? We need to get out of the way, because people are disciples. We have to be the people who step in, who follow Christ, and in our following become a reflection of who Christ is. Failure to be the positive is the negative. I want you to understand what that means. From the hinder point of view, if we are not active as a church and as individuals sharing the love of God through program, then we are actually doing harm. We are hindering. We're not providing space and time. The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is good men to do nothing. You would think that statement is kind of outdated because it's pretty old. But I think if you look around today, you can see it. So we need to become the good men. That's good men and women. For us to exercise the call of Christ to help the world, we need to be more than on the sidelines. We have to be active. We have to be the good people who do something. If you believe there are challenges that need to be overcome, then get started. Get involved. Youth are seeking, but they can find a few good adults who will invest. Exercising our call of faith is an important part. We need to be willing to step into service and connection. Because the biggest question that comes out of this is, are we really the church? Or is the building the church? We invite people to come into our building, but do we invite them to come into fellowship? Do we open the door for youth? Do we love them enough and care for them enough that they can see the body of Christ living and breathing and moving? it's important that we have our own relationship with God, that we stand firm in where our daily practices are that connect us to God, so that when the children look at us, they see that reflection. We need to make this an effective ministry. To make it an effective ministry, we have to keep it simple. We also have to keep it incarnational, and we have to keep it missional. Now, simple is that personal relationship. It's not merely program, but it's program offered with love and with caring. We're not asking people to borrow space from the church. They are ministries of the church. They should be given equal billing, equal treatment with every other ministry of the local church. When it is a ministry of the church, I tell you what, if the floor isn't mopped because there was somebody missed it, they won't kick out the Scouts. They won't kick out the Girl Scouts. They won't kick out the Campfire Club, because it's a ministry of the church. But if it's somebody else's group who happens to be meeting in the church, getting kicked out is a pretty easy way to go. Beyond that, through scouting, we must be in alignment with the mission of the church and with its other ministries. So, in the nutshell, we have great programs out there that are proven through research to be able to provide an impact in a child's life. They open the doors that give connection between adults, positive adults, and children. But the most important part actually is to be able to live into our faith, to love others as God has loved us. That's our command, and that's our calling. I don't want to really bore you with lots of extra blah, blah, blah. So I want to open it up for questions and see if you guys have some things that you're concerned about or would like to talk about. And then we will also take a little bit extra longer break on this first one, so people can catch their second cup of coffee, maybe their third, and use the rest of them if you want before we begin again, okay? You guys have questions, you can throw them into the chat box.
Stephen, there's been a comment in the chat box that surprisingly convincing a church pastor that scouting is a ministry has been a challenge. Can you speak to that for a moment?
I think we have a different and unique situation than we used to. When Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts first began, pastors were typically scoutmasters or chaplains or direct leaders within the Boy Scout and Girl Scout troops. It was in the church that Campfire kind of got its flame. So here's a unique piece that will open that door, is if we start to share, if we share with pastors directly what's going on, when a pastor gets involved with like running the Pray program and helping with the Pray program, what you see as a pastor start to understand the need for ministry. It's important that leaders who are in the program speak and connect regularly, with the church about what you're doing. Find ways to serve the church. Find ways to allow the church to serve you. That's how it becomes ministry, when the partnership starts to flow back and forth.
Okay, I'll serve you another lob for you to slam dunk here. How about suggestions for a service in scouting during the pandemic, other than Zooming with scouts and collecting food?
Service of scouts during the pandemic. Actually, that's a unique thing, because We have a lot of, as you know, most of our churches, the bulk of our church is over 65, which puts them in the high risk category. Your scouting organization, whether it's Girl Scouts or Boy Scouts or even your campfire club, are organized already. They know each other. They know how to connect. They've got phone numbers. And as a result, one of the unique things that they can do is they can share if there are neighbors within their neighborhood who might need groceries, who might not need to be getting out because it's a risk to their health, but could use their lawn mowed. And what you need to do is provide yourself as an open door for service. We'd be glad to go out, put our mask on, wash our hands, and pick up your groceries for you and drop it off at your doorstep. If you want to order it from the local grocery store, we'll go pick it up and bring it to you. You need some help with lawnmower, your lawn mowed, or other services. Scouts are great for those kinds of service projects, and they're a key element in our communities. I see a pastor who wrote, I think that our itinerant system sometimes hinders establishing strong scouting ministries in a church. I would tell you that that is both true and untrue, and I'll be specific. So an example would be Reverend Scott Pickering or Reverend Ortiz. Those are ministers who, everywhere they've gone, they've taken a look at how their church connects to youth in their community. And as a result, either they've supported or started a new scouting ministry at every single church they've been at. There's been direct consequences. Every church that they've gone to has actually grown in size. And it's not necessarily because they're telling people, you have to come join our church. Well, more of that the door is open and you're always welcome. People want and need connection and want and need to be invited in. That partnership, you know, the pastor swinging down to the Girl Scout meeting just to say, hey girls, we're glad you're here at the church. And is there anything I can pray for you for? That's not forcing your religion on somebody. It's an open invitation to know that I care and I'm going to act in my faith to love you. I actually was talking to the National Relationships member team at Girl Scouts, Jennifer Allbeck. And that is actually one of the things she reflected that her pastor used to do when she was in Girl Scouts as a young girl. And that changed her perception of the church tremendously. Her family didn't go to the church or attend services frequently, but she knew that the church cared, and particularly that the pastor was willing to be there and be an advocate for them. We have a lot of opportunities. We're not sharing necessarily with our pastors the good work that is going on in scouting. So Girl Scouts also has 2 national service projects, speaking specifically about Girl Scouts, where they are actually making masks and giving them to people in the community. Last time I checked, it was over 12,000 masks had been made and distributed, which is also really, really a cool opportunity, because this is actually something girls can do at home. Guys can do it too. But I know that the Girl Scouts have been actively in connecting with their communities through the COVID experience by being able to share that personal gift of a sewn mask. That's an interesting statement. There's one of the chats that says, a pastor taking the initiative to come to see and speak to the scouts outside of the Scout Sunday or a project is a novel idea. I began pastoring a small church when I was serving. We had 56 members of the church. And because I was under 50, I brought the age of the church way down. I was part-time local pastor, so I was managing a production facility and also pastoring. I didn't have the time to start a scout group specifically. But what I can tell you we did was we opened the door for October and November for 2 months. Every Saturday night, we built a small campfire behind the church. We told stories, we sang songs, and we roasted s'mores. That simple open door to connection to youth changed our church. Within 6 months, we were at 109 members attending service on a regular basis. The average age went from being 71 down to being 42 because we had lots of kids in the church and lots of young parents. They came because the door was open with connection. Scouting programs are specific by reaching into the church and reaching out into the community by offering that place, that simple door that says, we're glad to have you here. Let's see, our church, first thing the new youth leader did was appropriate the scout meeting room for children's ministry, leading the scouts floundering. It almost took 6 months for a scout unit to get a space to meet. This is one of those places where having a good local scouting coordinator and knowing the book of discipline can be really useful, because what it does is it opens the door to be able to say, this is a ministry of the church. And as a ministry of the church, it should be given equal billing and equal treatment. I know it's easy to say, well, we've hired a youth minister, but I tell you, the youth minister can't do it all on their own. And if they do, they're going to be less likely to succeed. One of the beauties of having a Girl Scout, a Boy Scout, or a campfire club at your church is there's already a team with already a program who can already invest. You need to help people understand. You're not just giving people space, you're really opening a door for ministry. Suzanne, that would be a perfect idea. She has a new pastor coming on July 1st, and she said, I'm going to introduce myself as the head of the Girl Scout ministry of the church. That actually is exactly what you're doing. You're in ministry. This is your calling. This is the place that you're called in community and the church. But when you introduce yourself to the pastor goes, wait, the Girl Scout ministry? You go, absolutely. And that opens the door for a really positive conversation. Thank you for that suggestion. Do I have any ideas on how to bridge the gap between our pack and the church? So packs in the church are kind of a uniquely different setting than, say, a Boy Scout troop or an older Girl Scout troop. Older Boy Scout troops and older Girl Scout troops have, when they do service projects, they can do a lot of organized, on-the-ground, hands and feet type ministry that's really strong. When you come to a pack, the kind of service that you can offer is more simple, but you offer to host a meal. I'll tell you what, when a Cub Scout or a Brownie brings a plate of food to somebody and smiles at them, I have yet to ever meet an adult whose heart isn't warmed just by the presence of a smiling kid. That's one of the ways that you can connect. There are other simple things that can help with at Girl Scout Sunday or at Boy Scout Sunday. I encourage you to separate them, not just do Scout Sunday, and also to have the youth engage. Now, when we do that, it's an open invitation. It's not a requirement. But I tell you what, when you get the youth to come for that single period of time, it actually connects those children to the church. I will tell you, being in lockdown is really a challenge. I'm aware of that. Scouters are a gregarious group. We love to be together. We love to do things together. And it has been a really difficult challenge. When the church comes back together, I fully expect that we're going to need to take a little extra time to focus so that we make sure that we're connecting. So one of the other things that somebody pointed out in the chat is, as a technique for connecting, is to make sure that you, when you have the opportunity to go to meetings, go to those meetings. The admin council, trustees. It's very important to make a report on scouting ministries at the Charge Conference. At the Charge Conference, all ministries are to report to the church. So if you could stand and talk about the number of youth that you've contacted, the number of prayer awards or faith awards and emblems that have been received, we can talk about what you've done as service projects, total service hours. Those are moments when the ministry of scouting shines at its best. Somebody else suggested that have the Girl Scouts or Cub Scouts make cards for the pastors and staff. Make sure that you share that information. So there's a troop that volunteers each year, and they do 3 specific service projects. They do poinsettia planting for Christmas, spring planting, and Scout Sunday, where they cook Dutch oven desserts for everybody. That's a really good way to connect people. I know in the unit I was at in South Carolina, our church did a Oktoberfest for Halloween, a trunk or treat Oktoberfest, and it was open to the community. You know, we cooked and served hot dogs for 1,500 people that night. It's quite a task, but Scouts are organized enough that they can do that. Susan's Girl Scout troop partnered with the adult Sunday school class at their church to participate in the local mission project together. That's a great relationship builder. I know venture crews who actually offer their service to go and clean up yards of elderly people who just can't get out and do it anymore. That's a great way of caring for people. And communication is important. So if you do a service project, work to get it in the church newsletter. Make sure that you're advertising the great ministry of work that you're doing. So at this point in time, I'm going to stop the recording. And if you would like to join us back here at 11:05, the next presentation is Are You Here to Save Someone? It's a look at a personal level of youth protection. And there are, as the comments from the chats and ideas, those will be consolidated and shared with everybody, along with the presentations and the recordings at each one of these. So I do appreciate it. I'm going to grab my 4th cup of coffee for the day, and then we will start the next presentation at 11:05. So we'll Eastern time. So we'll see you in about 15 minutes. Okay.